Today is Saturday, March 22nd, and I just have a short one today, but I just wanted to say that, this is something I was kind of talking to my dad about earlier, and it's that just because someone is an expert in one thing, it doesn't mean that they just have overall knowledge in everything, right? I guess recently I've been thinking, like today and yesterday, I've been thinking a lot about like misinformation, because I guess to give some context, my dad's a doctor and he's kind of been encountering that like misinformation, that it's like a whole thing. But I've kind of just been thinking about that a lot, and there's kind of two things, right? First thing with misinformation is what I just said. Like, just because someone is an expert in one thing doesn't mean they're an expert in everything. It doesn't mean that they have like extended knowledge, or they have some extra knowledge in other fields, right? And this is in like everything. Like, just because I have knowledge about, I don't know what I have knowledge. I have knowledge about like starting a YouTube channel. Just because I have knowledge about starting a YouTube channel, that doesn't mean I have knowledge about starting a business, right? That kind of thing. Even though skills and knowledge can be transferable between different topics, right? That doesn't mean that you just like automatically know it. And that sounds so obvious, right? But I think a lot of times we can use that. We can look at one person and look at them as having more knowledge just because they have more knowledge in a specific topic. But that doesn't mean you have more knowledge in everything, right? And I honestly kind of do this myself. Like, just because I have knowledge about productivity or whatever doesn't mean I have knowledge about, I don't know, something else, right? So when you're looking at other people, you have to know that, and you have to realize that and make sure you're not taking really, really important information from people who wouldn't really know what they're talking about, especially in like important things where you, like, with that kind of information is harder to get, right? But also for yourself, like, obviously you want to diversify your knowledge. You want to, like, maybe not for you, but I strive to be just very knowledgeable in lots of different things, right? And I think it's good to just have knowledge in lots of different things, but you can't, just because you're an expert in one thing doesn't mean that you can just be an expert in something else, right? The knowledge you have is the knowledge you have. You want to make sure you're using it wisely and you're not abusing that, right? And then the second thing kind of about like this misinformation, like knowledge kind of thing, is that you just have to be logical. You just have to be logical when receiving information from other people. Like, first of all, is what they're saying doesn't make sense, right? But also, like, how are you going to verify if they're right or not? Like, what is your basis for truth? For me, one of my biggest what's the word for that? One of my biggest like foundations for truth is like my Bible, right? But also there's so many other different foundations for truth that you can have. And I think one of those is just being logical. Like, does it make logical sense? Is it evidence-based? Is it blah, 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 right? Is it proven? Or maybe not necessarily proven, but is it, like, does the evidence show that? Is it, what does evidence show, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to say. And like I said, this isn't just about like medical things or like whatever. This is in all different kinds of things. Like, if you're receiving like information about, like, if you're watching a YouTube video about productivity, like, does it make sense? It probably does, right? But like, does it make sense for you, right? Does the evidence show, like, what does your evidence show? Like, if maybe, like, a lot of times some like productivity tips and things work for some people but not for other people. So like, maybe the evidence shows for you that it doesn't work for you, right? So you just have to be logical with these things and show just look at the objectives, right? Looking at the objectives and not succumbing to your emotions or how you feel about something, but actually what is, like, what you know to be true, right? Looking at your objectives. So I think finding a basis for truth is really important, not only in, like, I have the Bible, but that doesn't cover all fields, right? I want to have a basis for truth for other things. And I think just being logical, being evidence-based, being objective, trying to be as objective as possible, not letting your emotions take over, that is really important, right? So that's when you're receiving information, but also when you're giving information. Like a lot of times when I'm talking about, like even on these videos, when I'm talking to other people, I'll kind of just yap and it just doesn't make sense and I'm not logical, and I'm not being objective, right? So I guess my message for today is just be objective. Try to be as objective as possible. And obviously it's not like subjectivity is bad, and it's not like you should never like use subjectivity, because it is important. But I'm saying that like in important things and in things such as in things that are objective, be objective. And in things that are subjective, be subjective. That sounds so obvious, but hopefully that makes sense. So like in something that's objective, like, okay, let's take learning, for example. Okay, when I'm like memory, that is objective. It's not like I can feel memory. It's not like I can feel like I know something more. It's just like, do I actually know this knowledge or do I not know this knowledge? So when in something that's objective is that, you want to be objective in how you're learning and in how you are going about this process of learning. You need to be objective. You need to test yourself. You need to see like, okay, this is what I know, this is what I don't know, right? But in something that's more subjective, and often there are like objective and subjective parts to the same topic or to the same thing, right? So an example, like for my softball, like when I'm hitting, it's objective and subjective, because objectively there's like the physics and the mechanics and like the physics of hitting a softball, right? So there's that objectivity, and there's, according to physics, certain efficiencies you can get. But it's also subjective, because almost everyone's swing looks slightly different. Just it depends on like what feels comfortable for you, right? So in objective things, be objective, and in subjective things, be subjective. That's going to be different per situation, and also there will be combinations. It will be objective in some part of it, but subjective in another part of it. So yeah, try to be objective and try to be subjective when it calls for it. Be careful. Like, obviously, don't believe everything you see on the internet. This is such like we all know this, right? We all tell this to ourselves and tell to other people, but like I don't do that. Like, I do believe everything I see on the internet, and that, well, not really, not like especially when I'm like watching YouTube videos, I believe it, especially like videos that are similar to mine. And a lot of times it is true, and I have found it to be true in my own life. But I think we need to examine these things more, and just in other, like, not just like I said, this applies to general topics, like in health situations, in productivity situations, in spirituality situations, like in any kind of situation, in learning situations, right? In all these kinds of situations, we want to be objective, subjective when it calls for it, and just try to not let our emotions get in the way of things, and to just try to look at like, what does the evidence show? I think that is something that I've been learning a lot recently, because as I've been talking with my dad about these kinds of things, like, just like, what does the evidence show? Like, not what do your emotions show, not what you think is happening, but like, what is actually happening. It's actually is relating to something that I was talking about with my mom, because I'm taking an anatomy class right now, and she was explaining to me the difference between a sign and a symptom in like medical diagnosis situations, right? So a symptom is like when you say, I feel hot, or like I feel like I have a fever. So it's not like objective, it's kind of subjective. It's just like the patient is talking, the patient is saying like, oh, I feel this, I feel that. But then that becomes a sign when it's like, oh, you're 105 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So that's a sign. But then, and the signs and the symptoms can obviously like work together. But it's like, she said, a symptom becomes a sign when it's validated by data, right? So using that, like, don't just be looking at the symptoms. Don't just be looking at how you feel this thing is, or what you think is to be true. You think this works, you feel like this works. Don't just look at the symptoms. And obviously those are still helpful. It's still helpful for a doctor to know the symptoms. That's what they need, right? But you need to validate that. And you need to validate it to see if it's turning into a sign, right? I'm using these medical terms here because this is what I've been learning in my anatomy class. And I thought it was really interesting. I just realized this can be applied to not just this medical situation, but also just information and knowledge in general. Sometimes you will have these symptoms, you feel like this thing is true, you think this thing is true, but you need to actually validate that. Is it just a symptom, or is it actually a sign? And if it's actually a sign, then do something about it, right? If it's actually a sign, we know this thing to be true, and we can take action off of that. But if it's just a symptom, you can't act off of symptoms, right? You have to do something with the system. You have to try to validate it. And I think that's honestly why journaling can be really helpful, because I feel like journaling, you are externalizing your symptoms, and you can, as you're externalizing them, you're evaluating them, as you're writing them down, as you're talking about them or whatever, you're validating them and seeing if they're actually signs, and if you can actually do something about them, right? So that's just one application. So like I said, like the sign symptom thing can be applied in different things. So yeah, that's what I learned today. Try to be objective. Try to validate what you think to be true, what you feel to be true. Try to see if it's actually true, or if you should just stop worrying about it. And yeah, try to be objective when you need to be objective, and subjective when you need to be subjective. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, then I would love a like or a comment. I'm posting every single day talking about what I learned that day, and kind of just like how I'm thinking about it, how I'm trying to apply it, maybe how you guys can apply it at times. So if you want to see daily videos talking about what I'm learning every single day, then definitely subscribe. This is the video that I posted yesterday. I don't remember what I talked about, but you can see the title right there. You can subscribe in that video, and if you subscribe, I will see you in tomorrow's video.